Hey, what's up, everyone? This is me, Dre. I just want to come up with this follow-up video in regards to the shooting at Umpqua Community College from yesterday. It has been identified. The shooter is Chris Harper Mercer, 26-year-old. Now, with the story, a lot has come out, and when you look at the pictures, it looks like a white guy reading some of the information because they had a profile from a dating site, and it mentioned that he identified his ethnicity as biracial. So it hasn't been identified whether it's black or white and Asian, whatever the case is. But he has a very fair complexion. Now, for me, with this story, it's interesting because they say that he has some mental instabilities, and typically when it comes to mass shootings, as opposed to something where you might have a shooting in an urban setting, this guy is not quoted as a thug. You know, he's just very quiet, kind of reclusive, but having that mental instability. So that's the typical description for him. But at the same time, quite honestly, and I'm just going to go out and say fuck it and say this, because when it comes to shit like this, you're going to have a couple of different sides of the story. But from my casual observation, if it's identified as black or white, you're going to have some of these racist assholes accusing more of the black side and calling him a thug. But if it's something along the lines of whether he is biracial in terms of white and some other ethnicity that's not black, then there's going to be all kinds of excuses. Maybe he was sick in the head, too much medication. Maybe the excuse would be that he played too many video games, violent video games, or he listened to gangster rap music, and it forced him to take a very violent approach to going to the school to shoot her up. They did list his mother. Her name is Laurel Harper, or Laura Mercer. Much hasn't come out of that, but at the same time, once again, a lot of people say, well, Dre, you're throwing out the race card. No, I'm not throwing out the race card. When you look at the instances of crimes, especially when it comes to black people, we're always deemed as thugs, but white guys are always deemed as unruly or some sort of mental instability or some sort of a problem at home, to where maybe a lack of discipline was the reason why they acted out, and they just needed some more attention. But if it's identified that the mother was indeed black, then racists will say that because of single parenting household, that she didn't give him the proper upbringing. If they identify that she was white, that same assertion will not be made. So again, I'm just saying it's, and I don't give a fuck what people say, but I make these videos and I get a lot of trolls, and I cover a lot of these stories, and it just so happens that when it comes to a matter of race, I'm going to take a look objectively at everything that's going on. But at the same time, when I look at stories like Deron Wentz, the black guy who's involved with the murder mansions in D.C. where he set fire and 4 people were found dead, the description of him was he had a problem with the law, and he was a washout for the military service, the U.S. Marines, so he didn't make it through basic training. But we have the instance like James Holmes. They said that he was a promising neuroscientist, but this motherfucker goes into a movie theater in Aurora, Colorado, and shoots up the place and kills like between 12 and 16 people. So that's the difference. And it happens with all these stories. You can look at any instance in the past where someone black has been involved in some sort of crime or whatever the case. Even when it comes to like Eric Garner, Freddie Gray, Tamir Rice, all deemed as thugs. You know, you have this one dude, Nathan Enner. He said that Sandra Bland was a thug, even though she got arrested simply because she didn't want to put her cigarette out while she was sitting in a car. And I'm not trying to take too much away from what happened at the college, because again, lives were lost, and my heart goes out to the family of those who had lost a loved one. But at the same time, people are always going to formulate their opinion when it comes to these kind of mass shootings. And in the history, as far as the last 20 years, when you look at mass shootings, for the most part, and it does happen, but the most notable black mass shooters were Aaron Alexis from like 2 years ago at the Navy shipyard. And then, of course, you have John Malvo, the DC sniper. But most of the other, and I'm not saying all, but a good vast majority of the others were indeed white people. And again, you can take this whichever way that you like, but looking at this story, it's about identifying who the shooter was, and then of course understanding how people are going to comment. So if you want to call it fanning the flames, by all means go ahead and do so. But if you think that I'm race baiting, that's about the stupidest shit that I've ever heard. There's no such thing as race baiting. I'm simply pointing out a fact, just like when people want to throw out black on black crime without considering white on white crime, which is why you look at, Court TV and Investigation Discovery. The majority of those, it's white on white crime that's getting the publicity and all over the news. Court TV, you see the same thing. But when you want to talk about black on black crime, the one thing that people don't want to talk about is black people in their communities decrying the senseless violence within those communities. So I just want to make this video, and once again, a lot of people are going to have a lot of strong opinions about this simply because I'm bringing up the topic of ethnicity. But when you look at a picture of this shooter, he looks white, even though he's biracial, but it looks, from a genetic standpoint, his white side was the more dominant side. That's why he looks more like a white guy. But it's still to be identified the other half of his racial makeup. It really doesn't matter because, again, it's a human being that killed other people. But in this country, everything and people seem to tie everything to race. And for those who think that race isn't an issue in this country, then ask yourself how many times Obama has to be called a nigger, how many unarmed black people have to be killed. And I am going to take it there with this video, whether people agree or disagree with that, because I'm speaking from the vantage point of a black man and how many niggers I'm called on a daily basis with some of my videos. Anyway, if you like this video, hope that you like, subscribe, and share. Don't forget to check me out on Facebook. Peace.